Fumio Kishida is speaking at his official residence in Tokyo after former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shot during a campaign speech at a train station in the western city of Nara. Let's go live to the scene.
Prime Minister Kishida will be talking to the news media. Watanabe of news media. I have two starting questions. First, former Prime Minister Abe has been attacked when he was making a speech showing no vital signs. Tell me the latest updates on the situation and your thoughts on this incident. First, today, shortly before noontime today, in Nara Prefecture, Abe Shinzo, former Prime Minister of Japan, has been attacked and is now in critical condition, as I have been informed. Currently, doctors are doing everything they can. At this moment, I am hoping and praying that former Prime Minister Abe will survive this. This heinous act, and in the background, what the motives are, we don't know the detailed information yet, but elections are being held. This is the very foundation of democracy, and such an incident took place. It is barbaric and malicious, and it cannot be tolerated. We will do everything we can. I would like to use the most extreme words available to condemn this act. The government will anticipate every possible situation and take necessary responses. At this moment, doctors are working very hard to save Mr. Abe. So your question pertaining to the impact to the political situation, I believe it is not appropriate for me to address such a thing at this moment. I personally am not currently thinking about the political impact. I am currently looking at this very tough situation, and I'm hoping that everybody's doing everything they can to save Mr. Abe, and the government will do everything we can to be well prepared for any possible scenario. I think that's most important. This is the second question. Are there anything that's already decided for today's response you are going to be taking? You are returning your cabinet members, but what are your future course in the campaign? Well, from now on, we will have the cabinet members. They will all return to Tokyo. So once the cabinet members have convened, we will look at this incident, the current situation. We would share the information as well as the responses of the government and confirm everyone's role. Furthermore, in the elections and the schedules, there are no decisions made at this moment. But first, we have to have a good hold on what the reality is of now and take necessary responses. That's it.
So this is from NHK. After the cabinet members convened, what are you going to do? Well, first of all, we'll grasp the latest information, and as a government, we'll come up with what we should do. So first, we'll understand every situation, and then get cabinet members have a role to play. So according to the situation, we'll play out all the responsibilities. And first of all, everyone has to confirm the information and share the latest information. And government would come up with an adequate response to answer to every situation possible. I'm Kanehira. So this is a very shocking incident beyond words. So Prime Minister or the former Prime Minister was attacked and had fell down. This cannot be tolerated. And we remember the incidents after the war related situations. So there are some concerns coming out. Like just before the war. And with this social situation, as a Prime Minister and as one individual, what do you have to say? Well, this incident, we have to understand about the suspects and the backgrounds, but we do not have the full information available. So we'll have to look into the police investigation, confirm every information available. So the question, so the social trend maybe have been changing, or speaking about this incident particularly, we do not have the full information, so I cannot give out the comments on that point as of now. So first we'll have to understand the background. That is very important. So what about the security situation? So he was the former Prime Minister. I think there were full security system in place. So do you have any comments on that? Well, of course, as for the security, people were doing their best. But we are now reviewing the situation on site, and that is also an important thing to understand. And another point. So this is a barbaric, malicious act that cannot be tolerated. And this is just 2 days before the election outcomes would come out. So in order to protect democracy, this incident had happened. So what do you want to comment on this? Well, as for that, I just told that this is the foundation of democracy, the election, but this barbaric act had actually taken place. So Japan, as a democratic nation, as a member of this great nation, many people of Japan has the same feeling with me that this cannot be totally tolerated.
And I would like to use the strongest words to criticize such an act. And that is what I intended to convey at this time.
Kishida is now speaking at the official residence after the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shot at the train station in the western city of Nara. And as the Prime Minister said that this act is barbaric, malicious, and cannot be tolerated. And he also said that this is a very shocking incident. And at this point, the Shinzo Abe is now at very critical condition, and more details will be updated for you as we get more information. And now let's live cross to our correspondent who is now in Japan. He's waiting for us for more on that. That is Stephen Ross, join us from Tokyo. So Stephen, could you please tell us what's more at this point, at this very particular moment?
Well, as you have just seen, the Prime Minister Kishida made a quick return to Tokyo. His mood seems to be dejected, so we fear for the health of former Prime Minister Abe. Prime Minister Kishida has called for a reassembly or for all parliament ministers to come to Tokyo and to meet later this evening. That this appears to be developing at this time. My understanding from various reports is that at least one suspect has been arrested, possibly a former National Defense Forces members, and also that today's speech location by former Prime Minister Abe was not disclosed to the public. And so there's been a question, how would a potential assassin know these details which are held in secret? How did that person know that the former Prime Minister would be there this morning? These are the latest updates that we have. Any further questions from Beijing?
Yes, indeed. You know that the Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has also said that the cabinet ministers are now returning to Tokyo and they'll decide to do what's next. So how serious will that be, particularly for the political circumstances there in Tokyo?
Well, I would say it's of utmost seriousness. However, we do have the current Prime Minister, Fumio Kishida, continuing in his capacity. Now, he is sometimes seen to be as one who is operating under the guidance of former Prime Minister Abe. And so this would provide challenges for continuance of these policies. However, I think we could move forward smoothly if the worst has occurred, but we don't know that yet.
Yes, we hope that Shinzo Abe will be in a very good condition right now. But you know that recently there is no latest information on that, and we know that Shinzo Abe is still in very critical condition, and the doctors are doing everything they can to save his life. So could you please tell us more on that?
Well, as Prime Minister Kishida came out to address the cameras just moments ago, as you had on the live feed, we saw that his eyes were quite red. This was of concern to me. Now, earlier today, Japanese media reported that the former prime minister's had a cardiac crisis, or that his heart had stopped. In some cases, or in many cases, for the Japanese media, this is a kind of euphemism for that the prime minister would be in the worst possible condition. However, at this time, we have no confirmation of that at all. So we'll have to stand by for official confirmation on former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's current condition.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen Ross. Thank you for bringing us the latest from Tokyo. And now let's listen to what eyewitnesses told media about the shooting.
He was making his speech, and from behind, a man approached, and we were watching from above, and the first shot was just like a bazooka, like toy-like gun, and nobody collapsed. He was still, and nothing happened. But with the second shot, we could see gunpowder, and we could see the smoke coming out. It was the same gun, yes. And after the first shot, he kind of went back. And with the second shot, Mr. Abe collapsed. And people were conducting CPR. And many of the people around him were attending to him. What did it look like? He was wearing a gray T-shirt and a khaki color pants. And he was just out of energy, and he was just standing. He didn't run away or anything. He was just standing there. And the security police, I think, such people were there to surround him. But he didn't even attempt to run, and he just got arrested.
Now let's take a look at the political career of Shinzo Abe as former Prime Minister.
Shinzo Abe, a third-generation politician, first taking office as Prime Minister in 2006. Abe is the first Japanese government leader born after the Second World War. During his first term, scandals surrounded his cabinet. Support rate dropped as low as 28%, and the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, or the LDP, suffered a major loss in the upper house election in 2007. He resigned soon after, citing poor health and saying his presence was hindering the passage of essential bills. He was blamed for creating the so-called revolving door of prime ministers, 6 leaders in 6 years, until his second term began in 2012. Ironically, he had since become the longest-serving prime minister in Japanese history. Experts say the reform of multi-seat electoral districts and changes to campaign finance rules weakened the traditional factional influences in the LDP. Abe secured an unchallenged leadership in the ruling party. He gained public support with promises of an economic recovery. The so-called Abenomics was based on 3 arrows of monetary easing, fiscal stimulus and structural reforms. The public was desperate to crawl out of the prolonged deflation from the earthquake and tsunami that devastated the eastern coast of Japan. Corporate sentiments improved and Nikkei stock average made a steady recovery, more than doubling to over 23,000 in 2020 since he began his second term, despite inertia from the 2008 global recession. Analysts say Abe was cunning in balancing economic achievements, social welfare schemes, and aggressive diplomacy to boost Japanese exports, which maintained public support, while forcefully passing a number of unpopular security and defense-related bills. Tens of thousands have taken to the streets demanding him to step down. There was an anti-nuclear power demonstration in 2014, followed a year later by protests over so-called war legislations in 2015, and favoritism scandal in 2018. But despite these, he managed to win in elections and maintaining a clear majority in both the upper and lower houses. In 2017, after President Donald Trump pulled the US out of the Trans-Pacific talks, Abe tried to take the lead in the negotiations. He also tried to build stronger trade cooperations with China and another free trade agreement in the Asian Pacific, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Although Abe continued to stress the importance of the Japan-US alliance, the country steadily increased its defense arsenal, reducing its reliance on the US military. Abe's plan to revise Article 9 of Japan's pacifist constitution and increase its military budget raised concerns both at home and abroad. With the COVID-19 pandemic, analysts say the fruits of Abenomics have been considerably reduced, raising debate over Abe's legacy. With economic recovery still stagnant, many unsolved issues with neighbors, and relations with the US not as strong as before, constitutional revision has not made any progress. Japanese media say with all these challenges, Abe's successor might be drawing the short straw. Terence Teoshima, CGTN, Tokyo.
More details have emerged about the shooting of the former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Fuji TV reports that the suspect is a 3-year veteran of the Maritime Self Defense Force. NHK says he used a handmade gun. Abe, the former leader of ruling Liberal Democratic Party, was on a tour to Nara to support a candidate in a House of Councillors election scheduled for Sunday. Another speech was planned this afternoon in Kyoto. Incumbent Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is expected to arrive at his residence in Tokyo and meet the press. And officials from around the world have expressed sympathy for Abe. And for more on that, joining us now is Liu Qingbin, a professor at the Institute of Advanced Sciences at Yokohama National University. So, Professor, how do you view the timing of Mr. Abe's shooting?
Thank you for calling me. And now I cannot use that title. Now I'm a guest professor to Chinese Huachao University now. And my deep sympathy to Abe's family. And I'm so sorry to hear this news this morning. And my condolence to those relations, to those relatives. And it's a very bad news for whole Japan and also for international society. It will not be accepted, not just in Japan, but also in this peaceful world.
Well, Professor, thank you very much. And we know that the Shinzo Abe was shot when he was delivering the speech for the campaign to support a candidate for the Japan's upper house election that will be held very soon. So how will this affect Japan politically?
It definitely will change the combination of Japanese political power, and also the spectrum will be changed permanently, and the so-called egos and also those stronger and that's we use Habats to describe those Japanese LDP's inner group, and Abe's group will lost their leader, and the so-called the government spending for military, for self-defense force, and will be changed, I think. And Mr. Abe strongly and promote that Japan shall increase their spending for self-defense force from GDP 1% to 2% in 5 years. That's Mr. Abe's initiative and also his policy. But I think the LDP and the whole Japanese society will reconsider that.
Yes, Professor, and we know that Shinzo Abe now is in very critical condition, and the doctors are doing everything they can to save his life. But we know that the Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has also mentioned that this shocking incident is very barbaric and malicious and cannot be tolerated. So how rare is that incident happened in Japan?
Actually, 6 years ago, I was a visiting professor for Hokkaido University, and I met same situation or circumstance for election. Actually, 6 years ago, I myself shake Shinzo Abe's hand because he went to Hokkaido to promote LDP's policy. And I had the honor to shake his hand, and I don't have the vote. But I know that under the Pacific Constitution, Japan actually walked a peaceful path after World War II. And the Japan society is so peaceful, even we call Japanese people, they also call themselves peaceful folk. But actually, it was so peaceful. But we cannot imagine how this kind of incident happened. And for the politician, and during political campaign, during this election campaign, and that also tell us after pandemic, and also in this geopolitical crossroads, Japan's society also, facing a critical condition, and the whole society, I think, is thinking about this, and I think they will take heavy thought and serious measure to deal with the future.
And Professor, you know that the situation is now very dire at this particular moment, and you know that the cabinet ministers are all returning back to Tokyo for the worst preparation. So could you please tell us, besides the politically infected situation, what can that incident occurred and impacted on Japan's economy?
A quick response is, it make me reminds 1930s and also 1940s, but even the thing where we look very similar, but the past will be different. And compared to 70 and 80 years ago, in that time, Japanese extremists used this kind of measure to erase those peaceful politicians. But this time it's quite different, I think. And I heard the shooter is a former Self-Defense Force member. And we don't have the detail what he said to police, but we can imagine this kind of measure or action actually against Mr. Abe's policy that make self-defense force expanding and make self-defense force no more self-defense, but also assertive and can go outside to take more measures and even become U.S. U.S. global partner and can take action globally in this world everywhere. And I think we don't know the self-defense force thinking or thought, but this former member actually said no to Mr. Abe's policy.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor, for your insight. Thank you very much indeed. And for more on that, let's see how the stock market has been affected. My colleague Liu Zhaoqing is now joining us in the studio. So could you please tell us more about that?
Okay, let's see the impact. Now we can see after former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was shocked, the Nikkei 225 index dive for well after that is the then rebound. At least say the Toshibani Securities said the impact of insects on the stock market may be limited, and also he's no longer Prime Minister. The last time the Nikkei 225 is fell due to the Shinzo Abe was on August 28, 2020, when he resigned as Prime Minister of the Japan. Previously, the longest-serving Prime Minister launched these Abenomics policies to lift the economy out of deflation. Also, we can see it has contributed greatly to boosting Japanese stock market. Since the Shinzo Abe took office, the Nikkei stock index had risen from the bound to 10,000 points and exceeded 24,270 points in October 28th, setting a new height after burst of the Japan's economy's bubble. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Zhaoqing, for bringing us the latest on the impact on Japan's stock market. British Conservative